One little just sort of quick addition we wanted to share with you all is we recognize, this is a blitzkrieg of a kind of day as you're learning a lot of different skills. Carolyn and I are both like nerds, as you probably all are too, and we really enjoy reading on the topic of leadership and figure there's so much to include in this day. We wanted to give you sort of our top 3 picks each of must-reads. It's not homework, it's just an opportunity. If you're piqued by, or your interest is piqued at all by today, here are some great opportunities to read. So Carolyn, take it away.
So my first suggestion is a book called Getting to Yes, and I think that this is really great for you guys as you work through the negotiations with your residency leadership team, right? So Getting to Yes is negotiating without giving in, and you want to be able to get to that win-win collaboration sort of negotiation as opposed to the lose-lose or I win, you lose, or you lose, I win. That's the same thing. So Getting to Yes is the first one. The second one, it's not necessarily a book about leadership, but it was really impactful for me about my clinical care, and especially as we get more and more into situations where we feel like we are burned out. Compassionomics is written by an ICU doctor and another guy, and it's the revolutionary scientific evidence that caring makes a difference. It makes a difference in your patient outcomes. It makes a difference in your daily life. I did it as an audio book, and I cried at least twice in the book, and I'm not a crier because I'm postmenopausal and on antidepressants, so I definitely am not a crier, and yet I cried. So, Compassionomics, great book. He's a great speaker, too. And then the last one is an oldie but a goodie. This was published in 2013, Lean In. Now, just because it's about women in leadership doesn't mean that it's not applicable to men. And in fact, the person who told me to read this a number of years ago was a man who read it. And this was the first time for me that I learned about what imposter syndrome was when I first read that book. I'm reading chapter 2, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's me. Damn. I didn't know it had a name, right? So now that's part of the vernacular and the language, but it's an oldie but a goodie, and it's got some really good points in it. So those are my 3 recommendations.
Awesome. So mine starts with Drive. This is a great book by Daniel Pink that essentially, short read, probably like 100 pages, that really gets to the 3 things that motivate human beings. And if there's one thing I think that leaders have to do, it's keep the motivation coming. And it really, it has completely allowed me to re-examine a lot of the assumptions we've made about our residency and think about how can I actually take these 3 motivating factors and empower my residents differently. The second is spectacular. I really highly suggest this one. It's by Laconii. He writes leadership fables. And so it's a little hard to get through the first 80 pages or so because it's like a story of a business, which is not our jam at all. But like the last 40 pages or so really talks about this idea of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. If you read this, I promise you, you will literally be like, I have all 5 of those dysfunctions. Because we all do when we work in teams. Medicine is not a team sport. EM is, no question, right? But they don't train us to be good team leaders and teammates. And this book was just fascinating in terms of how best to utilize your team to get the best results possible. And then my other favorite book is Radical Candor. I am a Northeasterner. I'm New Jersey by born and raised, and now I live in Cleveland. And those people are nicer, and they don't like feedback. And so one of the things I realized...
They like feedback that's like, you're so good.
Yeah, they like what is it, radical insincerity is what the book titles it as. But radical candor is this idea of how do you give feedback meaningfully, but in a really, really effective way so that the person taking it hears it well. And it's a really great read. So I encourage you, all 6 of these books are stellar reads. Download it on your Kindle on your way home. Hopefully you got something new to read as you head out. Okay?
And we'll post all the titles of these on the Slack channel. And speaking of which, if you've gotten an email to invite you to the Slack channel, please accept it. I'm going to be continuing to try to add people, so by the end of the day, everyone is on the Slack channel. And at this point, we're transitioning to our second to last speaker. And that's going to be Dr. Stull, our co-host here. And he's going to be talking about resident recruitment. Now, what the cool things are is that he's been doing recruitment since he was a chief resident, and then he went straight from being a chief resident to a fellow, and then to an APD, and now a PD. And so he has lots of experience both recruiting during the pandemic when it was all on Zoom, and now when it's partly on Zoom, and all that good stuff. And he's going to go into the new things that are different about the match this year in recruiting that are kind of cool for the students and interesting for the programs. And I do want to say, for me, I have to bolt before the last session is over because they scheduled me to present at the same time that I'm here running this. So I wanted to say thank you for coming back after lunch, because it's nice to see all the faces. Thank you for participating. And again, please, please, please fill out the evaluation form so that we can continue to make this as good of an event as possible for the chief residents going forward in future years. So without further ado, Dr. Stull.
Thank you. Okay. First and foremost, because we're going to forget this, someone lost a key, room 1417. Oh, okay. Whoa, that's easy. So I want to get started talking to you about why recruitment's important. It's obviously important because there's no question that this is the lifeblood of residency, right? It is a constantly turning over specialty in a way. It's a constantly turning over job. And so you have a chance, unlike almost any other resident in your program, to truly make a mark. Because most of you will be the interviewers, tour guides, faces of your program at the end of the day when it comes to residency recruitment. Sure, there's that overly eager R1 who shows up to everything, but overall, you're the people that people are going to remember interviewing at your program and saying that resident told me about this awesome thing. So you really need to be thoughtful about how you approach recruiting. But before we do, I'd like to hear from you all what you need out of this session. Right? What is it that I can, because to Carolyn's point, we can get real nitty gritty about this preference signaling stuff, if you'd like. I don't have slides on it, but we can get there. Or we can sort of, go big picture. So I'm really interested. What do you need to hear about when it comes to recruiting? Okay, so motivating residents to actually show the hell up again. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yes, ma'am. What are some best practices if they're continuing virtual best practices, absolutely. The tough thing about that one is it's only year 2, so no one actually defines best practices, but I'll tell you what I think, which is best practice. No, okay, who else? We got another one. Yes, ma'am. So how do you fill the time of your day? Okay. I saw another hand over here. Yes, ma'am.
How to best portray the culture of the program without using generic words like family and
This one I've got a great slide for. We'll talk about that because you're absolutely right. We in EM love to be descriptive and describe your program as we're jacks of all trade, master of none. We prepare you for anything. Opportunity, leadership. You all say the same damn things, okay? Let's be clear. You know that because you've been through the process, but somehow you got brainwashed that your program was the only one that flies in helicopters, or the only one that drives in the EMS squad, or the only one that crikes somebody once in a while. No, we all do it, gang. At the end of the day, you're right, the differentiator is gonna be key, and we'll talk about that. Any others? Yes, ma'am. That's a tough one. That's a great one. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get there. Okay, and then the Sarah over there.
And linking to that, how the preference signaling may hinder DEI.
Yeah. It's. I'm just going to put my bias out there because I didn't get to decide this. I don't think this preference signaling thing is a great thing for the applicants. It's going to make our job easier as program directors. It's a very program director. That said, the data, the 1 year ENT's been doing it, says that applicants love it too. But what don't applicants love? They're like puppies. Yes. That's correct. I will challenge that conception. You guys have already learned I like to challenge things. My poor Chiefs, it's a whole year of this. That's a lot. But realistically, I do want to challenge. I think you can differentiate your program on Zoom, and I think programs have started to, but it takes thought, right? We have been washing and repeating the experience of recruitment for year after year after year, and somewhat unsuccessfully, right? Because it's really been a very programmatic-centric experience. Programs have treated it like, we sit on this hill, and all y'all applicants, come find us. And that's not right? It's not real, because what happens when you don't fill? Has anyone seen a program director after not filling? Yeah, like nuclear holocaust, okay? For them, emotionally, physically, it's ugly, okay? And so this is really an important feature. So let's get started. What I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is, one is that reality check, right? Is that you guys are in residency, that's awesome, but the only way you can continue to function as a residency is if you kind of fill your class coming in behind you. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about branding 101, and you got to brand yourselves as a program in order to be super successful. And one of the risks I always do in this is that I'm going to give my trade secrets out. I don't know that I actually have any meaningful trade secrets, but I've been asked to do this at Cord, at SAEM, at a lot of places. So clearly I'm doing something right with a branding, and so I think this is really important, and we'll talk about that. You got to know what you're actually looking for in the applicant. So just a little bit about what you're thinking when you're sitting across from applicants in that suit, or at least the suit mullet if you're doing it on Zoom. Guys, my legs are so aired out. During the day on Zoom, it's great. I got shorts on and a jacket. The Zoom mullet is a thing, and it's okay. I'm hoping, well, we'll talk about that in a second. And then we'll take one or two big leadership lessons from recruitment and how we can apply those to the things we do every day, whether it's November and you're in the middle of interviews or not. So, the reality of the sitch. You guys know this. You matched it, right? Applicants are interviewing at way too many places, which makes us interview too many applicants. It's chicken or egg. I don't know whose fault it is. Is it PD's fault for saying oh, I gotta fill? Or is it applicant's fault for, oh, I gotta get a job? It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but there's no question that essentially you max out, your probability of matching after 12 is asymptotic. This looks a lot like my other favorite curve, the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, but nonetheless, let's talk about the reality of the situation. 2030. We're going to have this deficit of jobs, according to the workforce report. 7,800 additional EM docs. Not enough jobs. That's scary. That's real scary. Do you think med students haven't heard this yet? They have. They have. You guys have to recognize this. If you don't realize, and guess what? The field just realized that medical students are smarter than we thought they were. I want to be clear. I don't actually believe this number. This is a really good statistic. This is a really good mathematical model. It does not account for, how many of you are doing fellowships? Yeah, how many are you going to do full-time EM for the first 30 years of your career? I see this woman be like, hell no, right? 6 of you are going to do full-time EM. This doesn't account for all of us in the field that don't do full-time EM, okay? And so I don't want you guys to stress too much about this. It is a problem that we're going to have to reckon with. But the students have a really myopic view. And it's I didn't go to all this schooling. I didn't get this 6 figures of debt to not have a job at the end of residency, right? And so this is the reality where we're at. 219 unfilled EM positions this year. There were 12 the year before. 12. It's giving me chills because now this is my friggin' job. Realistically, this is scary. This should scare you a little bit because a lot of programs, 69 programs across the country went unmatched. These aren't the 69 newest programs. I have some good friends all over the country who like went from Tums, because that's a PD's best friend, right, to full-on double, like BID PPI, okay? So you got to understand, this is the reality of the situation. EM, up until last year, was able to say this. Come at me, right? They were able to say this, not no more. You have to understand that we are at a different place in the specialty, in the history of our specialty, at least for the next couple years. And we're going to have to work to get people to our programs, right? And it's not just work of, I got to sit there and interview for 6 hours. No, you're going to have to sell yourselves, okay? You're going to have to sell your program, and you got to understand what makes your program unique, to your point. This idea that like the match is going to make it work is false, right? It's also unique. Like, does anyone have significant others? At least all of you probably have friends outside of medicine. That you ever try to explain the match to humans? And they're like, what? Like, it literally is so like anti-capitalist, anti-American, anti-freedom. Don't get me wrong, I love the match. You know, someone won the Nobel Prize in economics for designing the match. But it is a challenging paradigm to explain to like the average human being. And like, if it didn't work for Princess Leia or Barack Obama, let me be clear, hope ain't gonna work for your program, okay? I'm not kidding, right? Like, both are people that I adore, but at the end of the day, it didn't work for either of them. It's not gonna work for you. So, I want you to think about this, okay? And really think about this as a change in perspective. Because for a very long time, programs sat on that island and said, you're coming to an island because you're on a damn rickety boat. Come on, right? But the reality of the situation is, I need to get off that damn island. There are only 2 coconuts, and that's not going to last me very long, right? And so realistically, it's a like mutually assured destruction if we continue to think that the applicants have to come to us and just beg and grovel to become part of the family, okay? And so we really have to make the doors a little wider, the doors a little bit more open and accepting. So it's not about us, it's about them, right? You need to start thinking in taking the perspective of your applicants. And when you're sitting in recruitment meetings, you got to ask yourself, I encourage you to ask your program, have we thought about what it's actually like to be an applicant applying to this program? I say you got to brand yourself. That is my solution, okay? That is my solution. Single best episode of TV potentially in history, in my opinion. Since becoming an attendant, I treat yourself every day. But really, you got to brand yourself in ways that we've probably never had to do before. Because you've branded yourself as, we're EM. We do it all. We crike people. How cool is that? Yeah, so does he, so does she, so does he. You just gotta recognize that that is not a differentiator. The one differentiator we've let run the show for years is location, 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 right? Realistically, and that is forever gonna run a lot of the show. You gotta understand that. I live in Cleveland. It's called the Mistake by the Lake. It's not. It's a glorious city. It really is. Shut up. I see you, Chief. Come on. You gotta sell this. It is really a great place. But realistically, I gotta work a little harder than those UC Davis people over there who are like, it's sunny 364 days a year. It rained once yesterday. Ever. You have to think about that is location, location, location plays a big role. But it can't be the only thing. If it's the only thing differentiating your population and who you're getting, then you're really just getting a lot of applicants who are coming for the location. And that's not ideal either. How does that align with your culture of your program? Can you actually build a meaningful culture if everyone's there just to ski? No, right? So, that is a challenge. Not the Davis people, they don't ski, but the Utah people do. I think Utah, right? Yeah. This is from a great, great paper from Eric Chappelle in 2018, wrote this paper with a bunch of PDs, and I love this paper. It's a 3-pager, okay? It's a great read if you haven't read it. And this is the idea of branding 101 for your program, okay? There's really 4 pieces to branding. And the very first thing when you think about branding is, how did the pros do it? These are my brands, okay? Like, these are the brands I live off of. No, false. And let's not even get into crunchy or regular, because that will just derail us for the rest of the day, okay? I see people being like, of course crunchy. Nope. But smooth for life. But nonetheless, okay, can anyone, first of all, I don't need you to judge me for the like brands I have. I almost put Peloton up here and I was like, that would make me the basicest bitch you've ever met. But like, realistically, you guys have to think about this. Just let's talk about Jif. Can anyone tell me what comes to mind when the Jif pops up on the screen? Crunch, okay. What is it? The commercial with the family. Can anyone give me the dad car? Okay, well, we've grown up in different eras, but the thing that comes to my mind about Jif is choosy moms choose Jif, right? This is when I knew I was like a social justice crusader. At 5, I went up to my mom and was like, we can't do this because some people might not be able to afford it, and I still think you're a choosy mom. But anyway, like realistically, Jif is the brand that they have done for decades has choosy moms choose Jif. If you love your family, you choose Jif, right? And so you have to think about these things. If these roll off your tongue as I prompt them, then they've done a pretty damn good job of branding their program. What's going to roll off your tongue if I just name some programs of emergency medicine? It's going to be the same damn, like if I say Harvard, people just say Boston, right? Realistically, no, I'm not kidding. And no disrespect. If I say, well, Denver, that's a place, unfortunately. But like realistically, right, there is not a lot. You, as the chiefs in that program, are like, no, we differ. We're different. We're leaders. Who else are leaders here? Who else do chest tubes? Everybody, right? Like, this is important, guys. So you need to be thoughtful about the way you brand yourselves. And so going through it in a systematic way will really help your program overcome the challenges that I'm hearing a lot of you say is like, this Zoom thing just isn't working. Guys, it's probably here to stay. And while the young lady in the back makes the point of there's no consensus statement, I can almost guarantee you that most programs ain't going back to in-person anytime soon. I would be shocked if we go back, or like as a specialty. I would be really shocked. Now, I'm just trying to read tea leaves, right? But think about how much time, energy, and money you used to travel the country just to interview. I'm hopeful we go to hybrid. I think that would be the ideal, personally, is you interview with 15, 17 programs, and then there's a second look that they can actually come to if they want to, okay? That would be the ideal in my book, because I can spend $5,000 on one day as opposed to the $15,000 I spend over the course of my 10 days. Guess what I get to do with that 10K? Invest in my residents. I've said that a million times. Let's not go back because I actually want to use that money. Not for me, for them. I can buy a sim mannequin. I can, throw 3 different team building days for that thing. All sorts of things. So there is good things. I know a lot of you are like, Zoom, ugh. Because most of you are probably the class that just missed the Zoom life, right? You showed up and were on Zoom, but you got to interview it everywhere before Zoom was even a thing. Okay, so the first step in branding yourself is being clear about what your brand identity is. You have to be clear about that, okay? You have to be clear about that. This is an internal process that you sit around the table with your leadership team and say to yourself, what does it mean to be Henry Ford EM, right? What does it mean to be UC Irvine EM? What does that mean? And so a word of caution. Swiss Army knife does not differentiate you, because that is the thing that I hear people say, oh, we'll train you to be anywhere, anyone, anything, anytime. I never get that anything right? Like, what is it? We'll care for anyone, anytime, any place, some crap like that. It's a great book, read it. But realistically, everybody's doing that. That's the definition of the specialty. I'm not kidding, right? Everyone's like, I'm proud because, we do EM. That's what I'm applying to, right? You get that? So you cannot just be a Swiss Army knife. So this takes strategery, okay? This takes thoughtfulness. about what actually is different about your program. And the other thing, to somebody's earlier point, it ain't family. We all call ourselves a family. We do. Have you been to a single program who's like, I hate those bitches? Like, no! I've not. I interviewed at 15 programs, and everyone's like, you know what we are? A family. Sorry, guys. Like, I hate to say that, but it's true. And if you are the person that's going to stick your head in the ground and say, we're a family, then you're not going to differentiate yourself. And they're going to hear that 15 separate times on Zoom and not really have a reason to come to you versus another place. So I'm going to take 2 minutes. You sit with your co-chiefs, whoever you're sort of around that's at your program, and actually tell me something that identifies your brand. You've met me. I'm going to ask you at the end of like this to give me a couple. I'm probably going to challenge some of them, so don't feel bad. Going okay? What? Yeah, I think. Okay, let's come on back. We'll come on back. Can I get a volunteer or two to share with me what they came up with? Coming back, guys. Coming back. We're coming back. I've lost complete control. Okay. Yes, ma'am. What? Okay. Okay. So we're not naming shaming, right? So I don't have any idea what programs these are from, so my chiefs don't speak. But otherwise, like realistically, how many of you guarantee people's wellness by giving them a weekend off every block? Is that all? Oh. Okay, we aren't doing too bad. That would be that's a better differential than I thought. I didn't expect 3-day weekend. 3-day weekend. Okay. So a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's something. That is a differentiator. Okay. What I will challenge you here, though, what does that say to your applicants? Like, what kind of applicant are you recruiting then? Somebody who's balanced. Okay, because 3 days gives you balance. Okay, cool. That's okay. That's a good challenge, though. Okay, who else? Who else has a differentiator from the program? Yes, ma'am.
Kind of hard to say without giving a program away, but we were saying our thing is big, so everything's bigger in Texas. We're a big program, high volume, so we attract big personalities.
Yeah, that one program in Texas. I'm familiar. Yeah, right? Like, yeah. So, are you guys bigger over there too? Yeah, whatever side of Texas you're on, it's a big. But you've got a big. I do like what you're doing though, right? You're trying to actually go a step further than just take Texas and say it's Texas. You're trying to say if you're willing to own this. The question is your leadership going to agree? We got big personalities, right? Everything's bigger. We got bigger golden weekends. We got bigger, I would go big with that, but you got to commit to it. That's a good branding technique. Okay, somebody else? Anybody else want to throw something out there? Yes, ma'am.
I think we like to emphasize how we have subspecialty tracks within our program.
Okay.
And so we want to be a subspecialty type.
Okay, so a program emphasizing subspecialties. Anybody else got subspecialties they do? Turn around. Yeah. I will tell you, most programs are going to say. Now, this is the challenge, right? Everybody likes to say academic community. That's a big divide, right? If you are a community versus an academic program, you got to lean into those divides. But every academic place, what academic place doesn't have at least a couple fellowship training programs or fellowship trained physicians? At this point, everybody's doing it. There are many academic centers who are only hiring academic or fellowship trained physicians. So just be thoughtful about the way you push that a little harder, right? I'm pushing you guys harder to come up with real differentiators because those are hard. I love that you have something specific. I think that's a really great idea, is to not just, our brand isn't wellness, because everybody's brand has to be wellness nowadays because it's an ACGME requirement, right? But it's wellness through, I protect these 3 days. I make those 3 days about you. I like that sort of big, right? Give it a name, right? Really try to boil it down to 1 or 2 or 3 words or a phrase. This is powerful. If you can't tweet it, it ain't a thing these days. I'm not kidding, right? How many of our applicants right now are just figuring out where they want to go based on tweets or Instagram stories? The majority, I will tell you that right now. If you don't think that that is playing a huge role in your applicants' thoughts, then you're missing something. And that's where brand image comes in, okay? Brand image is the external idea of your program. How many of you know what your brand image is? It's really hard to know. Why? Because you're inside the program. You're part of the family. You're sold, hopefully, especially if you're a chief, you're sold on it, right? And so it's really hard to get outside that skin. How many of you do, ask your applicants at the end of the day, what did you think about our program? How many people send out a survey afterwards? Try. I will tell you, we send out a survey, I have a 50% response rate. Everybody that interviews at our program, 50% of people are at least responding to us and giving us the honest tea on what they feel about our program. And I appreciate that. So, what is brand image? It's this, right? What does it say to you when LeBron's holding Nike? I can jump. I can be the best basketball player of all time, potentially. One of. Not trying to be, I don't know who that is, sports ball. But realistically, he, that says something, right? Does anyone remember this commercial from a couple years ago? It was in the Super Bowl. Stella Artois. I thought this was a beautiful image of branding. Because what are they saying? You got a shitty-ass beer, and you got the dude, and you got SJP. The two different people could not have been across from each other, but both drinking a Stella. If you are Vogue and in heels, you can drink a Stella. If you bowling, you can drink a Stella. That's a good way. I'm the everyman's beer. Is anyone the everyman's program? That sounds bad. But it's not, is it? What's bad about that? Honestly, think about it. I love blue-collar residents. Being a blue-collar person myself, I'm a first-generation college student. I know what we went through. I know how it's an uphill, right? All these people that were like, my daddy's a doctor. I'm like, I don't know what, I've been to a doctor once in my life. Like, and so like, what's wrong with a blue-collar program? Nothing in my mind, And I think these are things we have to start wrestling with. You don't have to be the first of all, not all of us are the program that started EM, right? That is an easy brand. That's a low-hanging fruit brand, but is a brand nonetheless that exists out there that I'm quite familiar with, quite honestly. And, but first of all, there's a lot of people that say they started EM. Depends on the coast you're on, the state you're in, if you were the first. But what does that say? What does that say to Gen Zers who are interested in change? No, I'm not, this is not to throw I'm not trying to throw any program under the bus. I'm serious. But I want you guys to think critically about what you say about your programs. That's all I'm asking you to do. So you got to think about brand positioning, right? And in order to position your brand, meaning aligning what you think your brand is with what they think your brand is. That's a process that takes thoughtful experience to actually apply. You got to know what they think about you first of all, and you got to know what you think about yourself. And I know that sounds stupid, but truly, most places can't give me in 3 lines or less what their unique brand is. That doesn't sound just like the next place. And last but not least is brand experience, right? This is the actual living life of the brand. How do our applicants, you guys are the brand experience, quite honestly, right? You're living it. However, if you're in terms of recruitment, how do applicants experience the brand? The interview day. It's the only chance they get to experience the brand. Now, nowadays, we are extending that brand experience out a little bit more with engagement through Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. If any of you guys are doing any of that with your program, we're extending our brand. Because how many of you, honestly, 3 years ago when you were matching, followed all of the programs you were interviewing with on Twitter? Yeah, I'm getting a lot of hell no. Now, that's the only way the applicant knows about you guys, right? They are all following you on Twitter. I judge the success of the next 3 hours of my life based on how many people start following us on Twitter or Instagram in the next couple hours. It's true. If you're not looking at these metrics, you're losing out on a really rich data opportunity. Anyway, so let's talk about the brand experience. In today's world, it's this. And if your brand experience is just a bunch of boxes on Zoom, you got to ask yourself, are we actually doing a good job? Right? Are we applicant-centric? Are we treating it like land ho versus boat? Thank God. We got to have it bi-directional. I've seen a lot of programs out there when they switch to Zoom just literally copy and paste their interview day and put it online. That is unsuccessful. That's not a successful way to recruit the best people for you, because your interview day has a lot of downtime. And nobody minds sitting around the offices for a couple hours chatting with your program coordinator. But downtime on Zoom, good God, right? Vertical cuts. Just seriously, it's real bad. We've all been there. So we really have to be thoughtful about this. And you, as chiefs, have to be the brand ambassadors. You have to lead this process. And it's unique because you guys you lived through an era where this wasn't the norm. It's changed that quickly that in your residency, we now recruit most of our applicants off Zoom. So it's harder to communicate culture. But culture speaks. It's why you can say, choosy moms choose, Jif, Subaru, love. Right? You can name these things off the top of your head because they just get deep in your psyche. That's your job as brand ambassadors, is to actually sell the culture. Let me ask you an honest question, because I'm going to make fun of you when you raise your hand. No, I'm kidding. How many of you chose your residency based on that block schedule? Yeah, not a damn one of you. Not a damn one. One of you was like, they do pick you second year. I was so excited. No, you don't. Please. No. You're sad that you have to do pick you. I know every one of you is. And realistically, everybody does pick you. Not a single, I mean, maybe you thought about like, wow, they've got a ICU heavier rotation. ICU heavy programs do like 5 months. ICU light programs do 4. And no one has ever been recruited to an institution based on their block schedule. But what does your PD talk about the entire time? The block calendar includes do. It does. Why? They can look that stuff up. Let them. So, we're going to transition now to thinking about what you're actually looking for. And this, I think, is really important. If you don't go into interview day with your 3 or 4 or whoever your coach chiefs are, having a unified vision of what you're recruiting. It doesn't have to be the exact vision, but a clear vision of what it is you want to recruit. You're missing out. Because I bet the 3 of you are very different. But you probably can come together to say, this is the unifying characteristic we want in our next class. And if you can do that, you'll have a lot more success in communicating to the program who fits the culture, who fits your mold. I love to use this, the ideal team player. I say this on my interview day. Give me the dumb ones. I'll take them. Why? As long as they'll work hard. I'll train you. I'll teach you what you got to know. I took the dumb ones too. But I'm kidding. Got to keep it live at the middle of it's the end of the day, okay? No, I'm kidding. But there's a great book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. I actually have all of our interns read it when they first get there. And he posits there's 3 key criteria to a team player. They have to be hungry, not like lunch, but hungry. I want it. I want to be better. I want to grow. Humble. That's something I'm not, so I need more people around me that are like it, okay? And smart. And he's not talking about book smart. He's talking about people smart. You need emotional intelligence. And that creates the ideal team player. It's rare to find a person like that, but that's what I say we look for when I lead recruitment discussions. And that's how we all get on the same page about a rank list looking similar. So, my one piece of advice is speak with a unified voice, okay? You heard John Davis say it. You heard Brittany Betham say it. You heard Dave Snow say it. You're hearing me say it again. The more powerful you guys are as a united voice to your program, the more I have to listen, okay? And so be clear, but speak up. I bring you into that room. You are in a treasured place in, I don't know, some programs, publicize their rank list. Most don't, right? Most probably, you guys are the only residents potentially to see it, or not even, but maybe in the room as it's getting created. You gotta speak up. They want to hear your voice. That's why you're there. Find your voice and use it effectively. So, that's recruitment. I got 2 or 3 minutes so we can take some questions. But it's all a matter of perspective, right? Remember, are you gonna be that program that says we're on an island, but you need that damn boat? Brand yourself, right? If your brand is the Swiss Army knife, you're like everybody else. Search for that ideal team player. Are they hungry, humble, and smart? Then they could fit our program. Honestly, does the 250 versus 249 versus 246 matter? No. But if they're hungry, humble, and smart, they're awesome. Find your voice. Speak up in these meetings. We want to hear from you. I can tell you your program directors bring you into these meetings for a reason. Yes, ma'am.
Somebody in the audience asked the name of that book again that you made your interns read.
It's called The Ideal Team Player by Lencioni. Okay, questions? Yes, ma'am.
My fear is if you create a subculture, then now you've become a little more exclusive and have taken away maybe more diversity in your program.
A subculture of what? I'm sorry.
If you brand yourself and you say, like, we're specifically academic, where everyone will end up becoming affiliated with
Sure.
people, like something very specific.
Right.
But we would still want the community-driven resident
Sure.
kind of other people. And I feel like when you brand yourself, sometimes that can take away from.
It can. I think, one of the chiefs up front sort of is bringing up this idea of if you brand yourself too heavily, people self-select to your program. But isn't that what we're looking for? I'm not looking for someone who wants to live their whole life in Northeast Ohio, personally, right? If that's all I'm looking for, then that's fine. That can be your brand. Like, we just live here. But like here, come here if you want to be here. And like, but guess what? There are more and more programs popping up. They're coming for you, right? They're just popping up right down the street. Places who have been bastions, who've never had competition in their region before, suddenly have a program right down the street that they have to compete with realistically. And so you want to be saying, what is your differentiator? Your differentiator doesn't have to exclude, right? I don't think it necessarily excludes, but it allows them to know what makes you special, in my opinion. There was another hand over here. Yes, sir. Yeah, you can follow us at UH. So one way is, what's your hashtag? Honestly, what's your program's hashtag? Do I hear one? What is it? Built Ford Tough. No, that's an infringement of copyright law. But actually, thank you for bringing this up. I will tell you, be careful what you, we don't have a set on this, but be careful. I'm not kidding. Henry Ford, you guys want to be in Dave Snow's presentation next year? You just made yourself, right? I love it, but come up with a little uniqueness to it, or otherwise Ford's coming for you. They are. Guys, we did not run March Madness, but we ran our teaching tourney. My MedEd fellow put together this amazing teaching tournament this year, and she put it all in the March Madness. And 30 seconds before she sent it to me and was like, look, I'm ready to send this on Twitter and Instagram. And I was like, don't! March Madness has successfully sued like individuals for using the term March Madness, okay? So you gotta be careful with some of these branding issues. So for example, I'm not gonna tell you this year, so I'll tell you like our last year's, was hashtag Cleveland Rising. Why? Now, I have a resident who says that's the worst brand ever, but yet he matched. Clearly wasn't our number one choice, or he wasn't you know what I mean. Must not have been his number one because he didn't like the brand, but realistically, what do I say when people ask me about this? And I talk about this all through the interview day, is we believe that we're not ever done. We don't believe we're ever gonna be at the top. We're just gonna keep fighting, and every day we're gonna get a little bit better. That's what residency's about. That's what our program's about. Cleveland's Rising. This year's is gonna be, oh, so good. I'm excited. I'm really excited. Watch Twitter. What else? I got other. So that's an example, if that gives you. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, yes, ma'am. Last question.
So you just insinuated you change your branding of
No, I do not. We've been in Cleveland Rising now for 4 years. Like, since I got there, I was like, oh, I like this idea. And I mean, in fact, as she's like, we brand, and the other thing about branding is you got to share it with everybody, right? My team knows that's our brand. My guest speakers know it's our brand because I invite them to be my Cleveland Rising speaker series. As 2 guest speakers are in the room right now, it's quite nepotistic in academic medicine if you haven't noticed, but nonetheless, it is, I think, really important, and it just oozes, right? It becomes easy, and then people know you. People do. Guys, I've had 2 or 3 people in this room be like, I remember you from your little shtick. And it's like, yeah, I got a shtick. You can have a shtick too. Anyway, thank you, gang. I hope that you'll go home, and the one homework assignment I have for you is share that identity discussion with your program leadership. Share it. Engage them with it. See if they have a very different identity than you have. And start a conversation, okay? Thank you so much, and we'll transition right into another session here in a minute. So just take a stretch break, and we'll get going.